Someone's out there.
Huh?
Someone's there.
Yeah.
Let's see. Hello.
How's the position of the...
Hi, Steve. Yes, it's fine.
What, Steve? Which Steve?
Steve Allerton. Let's see. Still don't know how to pin the comment. There are 14 people here, though, so I'm not going to try much more. All right, trying again. Thank you, Steve, for circulating that. I used to know how to pin these comments, and I can't seem to do that anymore. Oh, well. Hello, everyone. There are 33 people there already.
Good grief.
We're starting on time. How about that? This is our A modal jam. Hope everyone's ready for it. Hope we're ready for it.
I think we're ready for it.
Yeah, I think we are ready for it. Let's see if I can figure out how to open this. Bigger.
Yeah, so you can read it.
Okay.
Technology.
Pin. There's the button.
Yay.
Okay, I pinned it.
Yay.
Great.
Technology is always our friend and our enemy.
It kind of
As
is.
it were.
Okay. We're going to play a familiar tune, or something we hope is familiar, as folks keep streaming into the jam.
And kind of inspired by the weather this week.
Yeah, a little bit.
In a big way.
Cold and frosty
Frosty.
these days. Hope you'll join in. 51 people out there. 54. Wow.
Gracious.
Great. We haven't even played a tune yet.
I gotta fix that though.
morning.
Do you know where that one's
62
from?
people in. I really don't.
I don't
Do you?
either. I don't either. But it was one of the first tunes I learned to play a long time ago.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's kind of gone by the wayside for so long. I had to relearn it when we were practicing.
That's right.
So
It was one of the first ones I learned too. In
anything we need to be
this key.
aware of?
Hello. Nice to see so many familiar names and faces in the little circles there. Henry Reed is the source, John Reddick says. Thank you, John. You always have the answers to questions like that. And I believe that's not the only Henry Reed tune we'll be playing tonight, but maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong when we get to that point. Ron Kephart is in buffering hell. I'm sorry, Ron. Hopefully that'll straighten out. We will leave the video up, though, so you can play along later if it keeps buffering. All right. Hi, Ruth. Hi, Sheila. Great to see everyone.
Is that Ruth Hollander?
It is.
Hey, Ruth.
All right.
Think about you lots.
People are asking about the key. We are in A modal, and I know that's kind of an ambiguous term, and I'm not able to get much more specific than that, but I can tell you that the fiddle will be tuned to standard GDAE tuning all night long. Some of these tunes could be played in the high bass tuning with the G taken up to A, but not all of them, so I just don't bother retuning at all. And Beth is going to be uncapoed for most of the evening. At the very end, we're going to capo up for a little bit different sound, and we can talk more about that when she gets there.
Yeah. And if any of you've watched these jams of ours, I talk a lot about how I don't play A without the capo generally, but when I play an A modal, I almost always play without the capo. Go figure. And just for those of you who haven't joined us before, when I play a straight A chord, I play it with one finger like this.
That's A major.
As opposed to this. So that's A major, but this is the way I play it, A major. And
why don't we go over all the shapes that you'll be using without the
Yeah.
capo? So A major, A minor,
A minor.
some of the time. Yep.
E.
Major and minor.
That's E major, E minor,
Yep.
G,
Yep.
D,
Uh-huh.
C.
C will come up
C
in two
will
things.
come up, and F.
F comes up in one.
In
And we'll
one
give you a
tune.
warning about those
Yeah.
with the unexpected chords.
Way more chords tonight than round peak.
Yeah, certainly.
So,
But here's the thing, with modal tunes, we think you generally need to be listening for ones and fives, so A's and E's, maybe major, maybe minor, depending on the tune and depending on what Beth has chosen to do. A lot of seven chord, the G, that comes up a whole lot in the modal category, and maybe not as much four chord, D, as you might expect from the other keys.
and one thing that you'll run into is that the minor, like the E minor and the G, can sound interchangeably correct.
Right.
So it's just really a matter of taste on the part of your melody player.
Well,
you know.
exactly. Unlike the tunes we've done in these jams before now, where, you know, there's kind of a commonly done chord progression for most of the tunes.
Right.
I don't feel like that's true in the world of A modal. I think it's really a matter of taste, and there are so many progressions that can sound good behind these tunes.
Right.
And Beth has just zeroed in on the ones that she likes, but that doesn't make them the only right ones.
Right, so it's really a matter of taste, and just bear in mind that we are not saying this is the way it's done, but this is the way we like it.
That's right.
So, you know, if you like it, that's great. If you don't, experiment around with some of the other chords. Keep the chords the same, but like where they appear or which one you choose to put in a certain place, you know, that's more of a personal choice.
Sure. And I gather there are a lot of banjo players in the crowd, so I thought that I might orient the banjo people to some of the corresponding shapes for her chords, assuming we're in the A modal or sawmill tuning. That's where I would be tuned if I were playing banjo along with this material, A, E, A, D, E. Whether she's playing A major or A minor, or switching between the two in the course of one tune, which will sometimes happen, your open strings in this tuning cover all of the basses. That's kind of an ambiguous A that's neither major nor minor. That seven chord, which comes up so very often in this world, is this. Third fret of the two outside strings, second fret of the third string. The 5 chord, an easy one would be this, 2nd fret of the 3rd string. That's like a 5-7, and that'll work with her E major and her E minor. You don't have to differentiate. A 4 chord, the D, is the 2nd fret of the 2 outside strings. Let's see, what else had we talked about? We talked about the C, which comes up in a couple tunes. Tight triangle of fingers here. Sorry, the camera is reversed. I can't quite figure out how to hold the banjo. 3rd fret of the 1st string, 2nd fret of the 2nd string, 3rd fret of the 3rd string, and you can leave the 4th string open. And if you really want to play an F chord in the one tune where that's going to come up, the closest and easiest thing that we have to it is here. It's the 1st fret of the 2 outside strings. That's a lot to remember, and I certainly don't expect any of the banjo players to get them all right. But maybe that'll give you something to hold on to.
See if there's any questions about what you were saying.
Not
I wanted to say
so
one
far.
more thing about guitar.
Not so far. Andy says Beth is both right and not wrong. Indeed. Thanks,
It's
Andy.
a great position to be in.
Yes.
The other thing I wanted to say about the modal style and everything is that it's very eerie sounding and maybe kind of emotional sounding, and it's a really good opportunity to think of things in terms of using a drone sound, and I achieve a lot of that by hammering on the bass E string, either with a note held down or just open. And just sort of think of, like, you know, I know I love bagpipes. I know a lot of people don't, but it's the underlying drone sound that supports the rest of the melody or the rest of the chording that you're going to be doing.
Yeah.
So hammer on that bass string a lot more than you would choose to when you're playing in more standard things than modal tuning.
So alternating bass, in other words, you might not be doing all that often.
But a lot of walks on the bass, on the E string, particularly the E string, I'm going to be using a lot of. So
let's play another tune.
Okay.
All right, this is going to be Shaking Down the Acorns, a tune that hopefully some people out there have heard. Steve Allerton, I hope you enjoy it. Yep. All right. Still trying to get my other device squared away. Forgive me for looking over here to the side so often. This tune, the way that we're used to playing it, has 3 short A parts. They're the same as each other, but 3 of them rather than 2 or 4 like you might expect. 2 more standard length B parts, but the 2 B parts are not quite the same as each other. So if you don't know this tune, you might want to listen once round before you jump in. And Beth is going to be on the A major chord.
And I'm going to be doing, one of the nice things about the way that I play A for when you're doing sort of a droney sound is I tend to roll my the pressure on and off of the string, like the strings like this.
It's the coolest sound.
To get a... That sounds like crap right there, but
it's really kind of interesting.
but hopefully it'll make more sense when we're in the middle of it. tunes that we play.
It sure is. All right. Hello. Aw, nice to see more friends. Hi, Nancy.
Which Nancy?
Nancy Johnson.
Hey, Nancy Johnson.
All right.
I can't read. He has to tell me. I can't see.
Hello, Howard. Howard loves your guitar playing. Howard Raines.
That's a mutual admiration society there, I have to say.
Okay, let's play John Riley the Shepherd. And if banjo players out there have perhaps learned this tune from me, you don't have to lower your fifth string to play along with us. Just leave it right where it is and it'll come out fine. You don't have to change anything about your version. But this is a beautiful tune, and it's actually not one that I hear people doing on instruments other than banjo very often, even though we learned it as a fiddle tune. It's from Art Stamper. We got it from our good friend Palmer Laux of Philadelphia. That's the first fiddler I heard play in real life. And Beth is going to be on the minor this time. This has one B part, 2 A's and 1 B. John Riley the Shepherd. Isn't that fun? Big Finish. That's what that was.
Whoops, where'd that G come from?
All good.
What was those all caps?
That was a private message
Oh.
that I think was in error.
Oh.
It's all right. I'm deciding that I like the iPad better than the computer
No
so
kidding.
far. I can read the comments better on the computer, but I still have to scroll them to see them. They don't automatically scroll. We're figuring this out as we go. If you want perfection, you're going to have to look elsewhere. But
We are
thanks
not-
for bearing with us.
Not techie wizards.
No.
Let's send this
play.
out to Steve Arkin.
Yes, let's do that. This is Abe's Retreat, which is a tune that had been kind of floating around in the air for me for a long time. I sort of knew how it went, but I never really worked it out until we were with our good friend Steve Arkin at the Banjo Camp North a few years ago, and he invited us to play this tune with him in the instructor concert. And we had to figure out, well, how does it actually go? And we've enjoyed playing it ever since, haven't we? And Beth's going to be on the major this time.
Yeah, thanks for remembering to say that.
Yeah, I think it's useful for everyone.
Yeah, to me and everybody
yeah.
else. Yeah.
fun to play.
Are we still keeping that looping speed?
I think we are.
Or are we speeding up a little
I
bit?
think we're doing okay with the lope. Sheila, you were asking about that pleasant loping tempo in the thread the other day. Do you feel like we're achieving that, or do we need to dial it back at all?
It's kind of...
It's a little hard
You get
to tell.
enthusiastic about it, and then you start speeding up.
Yes. Hi, Brendan. Brendan likes your
Hey,
accompaniment
Brendan!
on that one.
Let's play it, Brendan.
Yeah, wish you were here with your banjo right about now. We've
Absolutely.
got 85 people in the jam. Can you imagine a world that's not online in which an 85-person jam would actually work out?
No, not even the Onion would work for that.
No, I don't really think so.
I don't think so.
I don't really think so. Can I hear your E major chord, please?
Yeah.
How's that low E string?
I don't know.
With the chord, maybe? May I?
It looks all right, but whatever. Oops.
Yeah, there we go. Sounded like all that hammering on that string had maybe set it flat a little bit.
So this next tune, I thought when I learned this tune, 20-something years ago, I guess it was, I thought this was one of the most exciting tunes I'd ever heard. And it came from, didn't come from the Carpenter family?
Yeah, maybe that's right. West Virginia,
West
anyway.
Virginia. And then the part that I thought was really exciting was the third part, which I learned later was referred to as the hippie part by... it wasn't necessarily played by the Carpenter family.
I think it's a newer part, but I don't know where it came from.
I don't know where the hippies
Okay.
came up with it, but it's fun. The third part is fun and stuff. And this tune has all the extra chords in it, that we were talking about.
Did we already name the tune?
No.
This is Elzic's
Farewell.
Elzic's Farewell. And we are going to do it with the third part because that seems to be the version a lot of people are playing these days. But show the progression.
Yeah,
I
thought I would show the progression. So it's done. I can't do it without you.
Well, start
1,
on
2,
the
3.
To the C, to the
Walk
F,
it.
to the E major.
It's pretty important to walk it down from the A minor dun, 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 to the F, to the E, to get it into the progression.
And it does that same sequence of chords in the second half of the part. And then in the third part, this has 3 parts, that's when the D chord comes in very randomly, but it sounds so cool.
The hippie part.
That's right.
Any comments we need to be aware of before we?
The tempo is working for people.
Good.
Thanks, folks.
Good.
Really
Let us know
appreciate
if we get a little
words.
carried away, because one of the tunes we really get carried away.
Sometimes.
So we have to keep a lid on it.
Elzic's Farewell.
That could be a stoner tune, right?
Yeah, something like that. One of those to play for
forever,
20
never,
minutes
never,
at a
never,
time.
never, never, never.
Or even longer than that.
Huh.
Are people liking this so far? All right. Hi, Steve Arkin. Glad you're here. Steve says Earl White calls that third part the ooh-ah part. I like that. What fun. Hilarious. Okay. A lot of nice comments there. Hi, Terry Hayes. Falls of Richmond is on our list very soon
coming
indeed.
up. Yeah, indeed.
Great thinking. Hopefully you're playing along on your banjo. All right. Let's play Jake's Got the Bellyache, one of the best titles in the whole tradition. I wish we knew a little bit more about Jake. And
Where is it from?
it's from West Virginia.
Other than Rafe.
I think it's Ed and Hammond's.
Ed and Hammond's.
Yeah.
Me, the new Fogies person. Rafe.
It's okay.
Heard it from Rafe.
Yep. Aaron Marshall fiddles a beautiful version of it as well. All right, Jake's Got the Bellyache. This is kind of the opposite of the structure of Shakin' Down the Acorns. It has an ordinary length A part played twice. It has a short B part played 3 times, not 2 or 4 like you might expect. Did you have something else you wanted to say about it?
Yeah, this one, when I was talking about like really wailing on the bass E string, this one, if you really hammer on it, it just makes the tune resonate like crazy.
Because that's what the B part of the tune is all about.
You can sort of feel Jake's stomach, cramping up. If you wail on it.
Poor Jake.
Poor Jake. But imagery always helps me, so.
All right. Well, beautiful tune certainly came out of the Bellyache.
In the major.
Right.
Yeah.
We're going to be on the major.
Fixed here, all right. most.
Love it. If that's new to folks out there, did you enjoy that one? Do you want to really work it out? I recommend it. Really fun to play. All right.
So we had a request already for the next one.
We did.
Yeah.
I'm so glad. We don't exactly love to take requests because we like to be prepared, and we don't always have, every tune in the canon really under our fingers.
Oh, no.
But we're glad that you're thinking about what tunes might be on our list, and this is a good one that we hope a lot of people will know. The Falls of Richmond. Falls of Richmond. Also, isn't that a Hammond's Family tune?
I don't know.
I think it might be. I feel like we've got an abundance of West Virginia on here.
Well, West Virginia feels that way.
It does, doesn't it?
I had an incredible experience with this tune when I was playing with the first old-time band I ever played with, and there were 6 people in the band, and so we had banjo, I don't know how to go, guitar, banjo, mandolin, fiddle, banjo, guitar, like this.
2 banjos, 2 fiddles.
Two, like this,
2
and
guitars.
everything. And we played Falls of Richmond in competition at Mount Airy. Those of you who have not done competition yet, I hope this doesn't put you off. But so we played, we played it. And we thought we just did a bang up job. Of course, we did not make finals, or anything. And then went home. And then a while later, we figured out that someone had recorded us playing it, and we listened to it, and found out that these 2 people had been playing the A part, these 2 had been playing the B part, and these 2 have been playing the C part simultaneously.
And somehow it sort of worked out.
I think it gelled,
Right.
but it was not a learning experience for anybody, I wouldn't say. I never forgot that, boy.
And different people treat the structure of this multi-part tune in different ways. So we had to sort of settle on a way that we wanted to play it. I think of this version as a 3-part version, but it sort of circles back on itself. So we're going to play A part twice. We're going to play B part, I guess, twice. It's a short part, and the 2 Bs aren't quite the same if you think of it that way. We're going to play C part, also short, twice, and then instead of going back to the A, we're going to go back to the B and deal with that again. So A, B, C, B is how it's going to work out. No, I think we're all right.
So the Falls of Richmond.
Beth is going to be on the minor except for the C
third part,
and then it goes to the major.
Yeah. chords being completely interchangeable.
It can go so many
I
different
tried
ways.
every combo known to man. So sorry about that if you were trying to follow me.
They all worked.
They all worked, but they weren't necessarily the same thing every time around. So
Well,
I apologize for that.
I personally was missing the strength of sound of an 83-person jam session behind us whenever that C part came along. Getting up to that third position, A note, is a unique experience for me every time. Every time. I need a violin friend to help me figure out how to find that note. I just go for it. And sometimes I get it closer than others. And the 83 people could have covered up the sound.
Yeah, right.
But
why is
they're
it
not
that
here.
the ones that we've known the longest are the hardest ones to play?
Go figure. I had a terrible time getting Cold Frosty Morning under
I know
control.
it.
I don't know about you.
I guess it's because you let them go out of your repertoire, you know,
Maybe.
and then they come back. And
Okay.
I thought I could do Falls of Richmond in my sleep. but-
Sheila Stone, in all caps, says, "Pace is perfect. Can we just stay on this tune for another couple days?" Aw, thanks, Sheila. I'm so glad. All right, moving right along. This is one of my favorite newer tunes to play on the fiddle. It's called All Young. This comes from Melvin Wine of West Virginia, one of our favorites. And here too, there are a lot of different ways it could be chorded, but we took some cues from our friends in the Onlys, who put out a great version of this on their fairly new CD, and then Beth figured out her own thing to do elsewhere in the tune. And this is on the major.
Major, yeah.
Are you ready to roll? Love it. Love it. Debbie asks, please let this jam be available afterwards. Yes, if you haven't already discovered in our previous jams, we do leave these videos archived on my page for asynchronous jamming whenever you want, and we will do the same thing here. Thanks for asking about that, Debbie. All right, let's do The Rocky Road to Dublin. This is a tricky one. This is a tricky one, but I really feel like Beth's chords help organize the tune. This is another 3-part tune, and each of them has a really distinctive sound in the melody and in the chords. So follow her if you're not having luck following me. It's going to be on the major, and the B part is going to have that C chord.
Very unexpected. What did you tell me that was? A 3?
I guess it's a 3 chord.
A 3 chord. How many times do you ever play
in
a
old-time
3?
music? But I guess that's how it would be numbered. Maybe a flat 3. I don't know. Whatever.
Theory, we're not.
No, we're not really up on that.
Yeah.
Ask our classical violin friends about that too, as well as how to get reliably into 3rd position. All right, here we go. road to Dublin.
I got off on the wrong turn a couple of times
Uh-oh.
on the road.
Did you wind up in Limerick
No, I
instead?
think I might have. Yeah,
It's a wild tune, though.
but got my way back.
Yeah, we learned that from our friend Jason Cade from one of those wonderful Hog-Eyed Man albums that he's made happen with some cohorts. Terrific sound. Dave Liddell. Hello, Dave.
Hey,
Wish you were here with your banjo.
Yeah.
All right. Maxine, hi.
Hey, Max.
Thanks for chiming in. A lot of our favorite banjo players out there. Steve Arkin was there in the chat, too.
Oh, my.
Like
My,
all of
my.
our favorite banjo players. All right, speaking of favorite banjo players, this next one, Lady of the Lake, we learned from one of them, although he was playing the fiddle when he taught it to us. We got this from Paul Brown. Paul Brown learned this tune from Parley Parsons of Southwest Virginia. Best name for an old-time musician I've ever heard, Parley Parsons, right?
It's pretty good.
Yeah, and then it's sort of morphed in Paul's mind and in Paul's hands. So we play it more after Paul than after Mr. Parsons. But we hope you enjoy it. This one has a slightly crooked A part. It's a little bit longer than you'd expect. So we're actually going to jump into it with Beth coming in right after the crooked spot. And I think that will help everyone make more sense of where it falls, if you hear where her dramatic chord change falls relative to finality.
It's a good name for this key, drama.
Drama, that's
Yeah.
right. All right, Lady of the Lake. bunch of ladies of the lake in this music, and I think they might all be from Southwest Virginia, but that's the only one I've really been able to get to stick in my craw. I don't know why. Some of them sound more modal than others, too.
So this one comes from James Leva.
Well, sort of. From Emmett Lundy via James Leva. Two great Southwest Virginia fiddlers, one older than the other. Right.
Yeah, right.
Highlander's Farewell, we just love to play though. And it's going to be split on the guitar between minor in the A part and major in the B part. Can I hear that? Thank you. And I want to show the fiddlers something that I learned to do in this tune. I've been doing it in other tunes too. It's kind of a handy lick for the standard tuned A modal material, but it's from Emmett Lundy. So you bar the G and the D with your index finger, like that. Hard to get that in tune. And then you add a further element that's even a little harder to get in tune. Put your little finger up on the A note on the D string. So bar, additional A note, and that gives you an octave of A between the fingers. And Emmett Lundy had the melody going on the bass string, but he had this really cool high drone that you can't get any other way, and I thought that was so clever. So give that a try. If you can't get it in tune, we won't be able to hear you, and no one else will either. If I can't get it in tune, everyone will be able to hear. Let's see what happens.
And record it for posterity.
That's right. There it is. it. And if you haven't heard James Leva play that on the fiddle, you should really do that. That was my introduction to the tune, and it was yours too, I guess.
Yeah.
It was on the Renegades album, which the Field Recorders Collective has reissued. So even though the original album is long out of print, you can download or buy a physical copy of the Field Recorders Collective version through their website, and you should really check it out. That tune has been recorded by various modern musicians. I'm glad that it's circulating, but James just put a really special spin on the fiddling, and he helped me kind of access the tune. The Emmett Lundy recording is a little impenetrable.
It's really good driving music too.
Yeah, that whole Renegades album is great for
Down
driving.
the mountains, we will love
You
it.
should get it. I've listened to it
A million times.
thousands of times, and I can't wait to hear it again. Yeah, I've been listening to it since '95. All right, we're going to do one more here with the capo off for Beth, and then we're going to do a couple after that with the capo on, and then we'll wind things down.
So this is like the 850th version of this tune.
That's right. It's a Shady Grove, one
Yeah.
version of the many, many versions of this tune. And a lot of them, I think, are kind of boring to play in a jam environment or in an instrumental environment because they really want the lyrics. But this one has a very distinct A and B part. And I don't know if it could be sung to really, but it's great in this environment.
Well, I don't know if you would sing it to this, but if you are a singer and you do keep words in your head, it does help you keep the parts separated.
Yeah, that is true.
With this.
All right, and it's going to start on the 7th chord, the G, so I'm actually going to shuffle into it on G. You'll be able to recognize it as a Shady Grove, but don't expect your usual Shady Grove to go with it exactly. I think this is from Henry Reed as well. If John Reddick or anybody else out there knows whether that's true, I'd be curious to hear it. style version.
It's tricky.
Yeah.
That
It
one.
really doesn't sound like the others.
It
Eric
does,
Root
but it
says that's
doesn't.
the one from Henry Reed. Thanks, Eric. All right, good. John Reddick concurs. Miles Krassen concurs via Sheila Stone. Thanks, everybody, for cluing us in. Now I can feel more confident when I tell people that's the Henry Reed Shady Grove, which I've been telling people without really verifying like I should.
So we got about 3 more.
3 more to do.
Is that too many? Are y'all done? Or
We've still got 69 people there with us.
Yeah.
I guess some are all right with going a little longer. How's the 5? Yeah, that sounds good. All right, so you've put the capo on, and we were trying to decide why you did that for these last 3 tunes, because they could be played the other way. It's not like you can get chords here that you couldn't get without the capo. But didn't you feel like you just wanted a little bit brighter sound for these?
Yeah, brighter sound and
A little stronger sound.
and I can do just a little bit more what I call searching and destroying. I'm more accustomed to playing in the key of A with capo on, so I know where notes that I look for are, but as I've told you, my big secret is you just look for them all here on the 2nd fret. Everything I ever want is all on the 2nd fret.
That's right.
So,
But more of your go-to runs for
Yeah.
the key of A are now available.
So it's more that, and these aren't quite, in my opinion, don't require that drone sound that I was talking about quite as much as some of the others.
True.
And so you can get more of an interesting sound with capo.
Right. And these last 3, not surprisingly, will all be major. That's the one thing that wouldn't be so feasible with
because
the
I
capo
can
on.
play A minor with a capo on.
Right.
So
Let me see if I'm still with you. All right. And I saw someone asking about the tip jar link. I did try to pin that, and it might also be in the description of the jam. But thanks for asking. If you can't find it, just scroll way up, and hopefully it's there somewhere. There's a PayPal and a Venmo.
and maybe someone could post it.
Yeah.
Copy and
If
paste it.
someone out there can find that link and doesn't mind sharing to the thread, that would be great. All right. Some people are talking about speed changes and network problems. Shoot, huh? Well, yeah. It'll be interesting for us to watch some of this video back and see if we're having the streaming problems that a couple people are mentioning too. I apologize for that. We have pretty darn good internet here, but who knows? Things sometimes act up. All right, we're going to play one from Ed Haley, a lesser-known tune from Ed Haley, actually, called Hell Up Coal Holler. And this is another one that our good friend Palmer Laux introduced us to a while back. Holler, kind of a strange tune, but fun to play. All right, that title goes with more than one tune as well. Sometimes Hell Up Coal Holler is a C tune, but I don't think I know that one. Do you?
No, I don't think so.
No.
So this one is the one we have a hard time keeping a lid on it.
Yeah, we were doing better in our practice sessions.
Yeah.
This is another Ed Haley tune. This is called No Corn on Tygart, and that's another title that attaches to multiple melodies. We play a really fun one over in G from somebody else, but this is sort of like a Salt River, and it almost makes me wonder if the track was mislabeled on the Ed Haley recording.
You need to check anything?
But it's very, very fun to play, and we hope you'll enjoy it. Jennifer Wilkin is out there. Hi, Jennifer. Wish you were here with your fiddle. A lot of people are resharing the tip jar link. Thanks, y'all.
Thank you. We appreciate that.
Great. Okay, people are saying the slowdowns might be on their end. We'll see.
I hope. We paid extra money for extra internet.
We sure
so,
do.
I hope it isn't ours. Otherwise, you need to see about it.
I know. Call Comcast and complain.
Yeah.
You know, I have found with Comcast, I don't know if this is true of other
What do we
internet
have?
providers.
We have Infinity.
Xfinity.
Xfinity.
It's Comcast.
Oh, okay.
It's the same thing. Comcast and Xfinity are the same thing.
What?
But when we're not getting the speeds that we're paying for, I call Comcast or Xfinity and I complain, and they do some kind of test while I'm on the phone with them, and they say the same thing every time. There's congestion on the line. Let me clear the congestion. And then they clear it, and then the speeds are back again. So now I just call up and I ask, can you please clear the congestion on the line? And they do it.
I mean, it's like COVID has made it to the internet. You know?
Funniest
figure.
way to put it, though. All right, No Corn on Tygart from Ed Haley, kind of a Salt River. Not too fast.
Not too fast. I'll do my best. dull roar.
I think we may have, though.
Well, we
I
tried.
think we've trained ourselves.
It's fun to go 100 miles an hour on that one.
It is, isn't it?
Yep.
Oh, I'm seeing new names every time I scroll through. Tom Bailey is out there. Hi, Tom.
Hey,
I wish
Tom.
you were here with the guitar.
Yeah.
Donna Feldman. Hello, Donna. Amy Sternhell.
Ton
A lot of
people.
our greater New York friends. That's great. Okay, we're going to do one last number. Hopefully this is one that folks might know. Fine Times at Our House.
We actually did a CD, just the two of us, and titled it Fine Times at Our House, but we didn't put that tune on it.
It was kind of an inside joke for old-time music audiences who would have recognized the title.
And we got a little bit of flack
A
about
little bit of
that.
flack. It was more a mood that we wanted to,
So anyway,
to create with the
Yeah.
music.
Let's
But
talk about-
now we'll play the tune.
that's what happens when you play old-time music at home. Yeah, fine times at your house.
That's right. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Yeah.
We are going to scroll through the comments, all of them, later, and see what people had to say. I see I've gotten some private messages as well. Sorry we haven't been able to totally tend to those while the session is going.
We
Let
don't,
us
we
know.
don't have a roadie.
No, we don't have a roadie yet. Maybe,
Yet.
maybe next month.
Yeah, who knows?
Let us know if you'd like to see these online jams keep coming. We've been enjoying doing them every few weeks. I think this is our fourth one, is
Yeah,
that
I
right?
think so.
And we're happy to do more if people want them. They're really fun for us. They're good excuses for us to get a list of tunes in practice again.
Yeah, we got all excited. We were trying to think of a theme, for this one, and we got all excited. We had I don't know, 12, at least 12. We have 15 tonight. We had 12 original tunes, not ours, of people,
New old-time tunes.
old-time tunes of people that we just love, like Jim Childress and what's his name? Mark Samos.
Wasn't sure where you were going.
Sorry about that. Mark Samos, Aaron Marshall, various ones, and we had quite a nice list. And then we figured out that copyright.
Well,
issue.
yeah, especially for
So-
videos that do stay archived, it's
Right.
probably not a great idea for
Yeah.
copywritten music to be put out there. So, as far as we
Yeah.
know, everything in these jam sessions that we've been sharing is in the public domain, I think.
As far as we
At
know.
least this one.
As far as we know, it is.
Yep.
So,
Further themes to be determined, but if you have suggestions for themes, please
Yeah.
send them our way. It
Let
can
us
just be
know.
a key or a fiddle tuning or whatever, or if it's a region that you're interested in, maybe we can deliver there.
in self-defense, we don't go into the F and B,
No, we don't
B
play
flat
F and B
territory.
flat. We
Yeah.
don't play rags, really.
Yeah.
Just a very, very few.
Very few rags.
But throw other suggestions
Yeah.
at us, please. And let us know, too, what's working well, what's maybe not working so well. We want these to satisfy people and meet your needs when in-person jamming isn't happening so much. So it's not the same experience, but let us know how we can make it even closer to that experience that you might be missing.
Keeps us in practice. That's what's a good thing.
That's right.
Yeah.
All right, Fine Times at Our House, which is
Okay.
what we have had here tonight
Absolutely.
with y'all. Still 69, 70 people
Gracious.
in the room with us. I love that. We hope you've enjoyed playing along. I hope you've been playing along. This wasn't meant to be a concert.
And do remember that it is archived, so to speak, on Adam's Facebook page, so you can
We
go
have no
back.
intention of removing these videos, and there are 3 others kind of like it if you keep scrolling down my page and want to play along after the fact. We wish you would.
Maybe there's some slick way of putting them all together on your page.
Wouldn't
but
that be something?
I have
don't
no
know how
idea.
to
If
do
anybody
that.
knows how to do that, tell us.
Right. We need to take a Facebook class.
Yeah.
All right. I'm getting ready to stop the stream. Hope
Bye-bye.
everyone had fun with us. Let's see. How do I stop it?
You don't. We're going
Oh, there's the
forever.
finish button. All right. See you
Bye-bye.
later. Bye.